Hi, everybody. Welcome to Friday, January 16th lecture for drug education. We are moving on to Chapter 2 in our book. If you haven't read the book yet, I would pause the video lecture here, read through your book first, and then come back to this, as this will be kind of a summarizing thoughts, critical thinking opportunity for what you've read in Chapter 2. A couple of reminders as you launch into your weekend. You will have your first assignment due for this class on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. You can access that either under the Week 1 folder under Content, or if you click on the Assignments tab, you will see the assignment number 1, Drug Use Survey, or you can also click on the calendar and the assignment will be available there as well. Your assignment is due Sunday at 11:59 p.m. If you turn it in after that, just a reminder that it is a 10% deduction per day. So, try to utilize your time efficiently, especially since you probably don't have too much homework yet already in the semester. But if it is turned in after Sunday at 11:59, it will be deducted points, no questions asked. So no need to email me that your computer died or you didn't have internet access or anything like that. Work yourself backwards to make sure you budget time for being able to do this assignment. And then I will not see you on Monday either because we don't have any classes. It is Martin Luther King Day. So I won't see you again until Wednesday, January 21st. And at that time, you should be reading Chapter 3 so that we can talk through that in class together. So in Chapter 2, throughout history in the United States, we have had drug use and we've had drug abuse, and we are a nation that prides themselves on people being able to make their own decisions and have some independent freedom, but there is a fine line between freedom and then ensuring public safety, especially when it comes to substances that can be harmful for us. So we see the freedom versus safety question all over the place in the United States, including drug laws. But other things are, freedom to drive whatever speed you want. You will get pulled over if a law enforcement catches you, and they'll give you a fine. But for some people, that doesn't deter them from doing it, right? They say, well, I have the freedom to drive however fast I want to, or I have the freedom to not wear a seatbelt if I don't want to, or I have the freedom to XYZ, right? Fill in the blank. I have the freedom to consume as many trans fats as I want to. We are a country who has a lot of choices and a lot of freedom, but it is also imperative that for public safety, we kind of put some parameters along that freedom as well. So the biggest concerns when it comes to drugs, the use of drugs, the misuse of drugs, the abuse of drugs are toxicity, addiction, and crime. These are all mentioned in your book, but I'm going to give a brief overview again of the biggest concerns when it comes to taking a look at drug use in society today, the social problems of drug use, and kind of where drug laws have gone in the United States. They've really been based on these big concerns of toxicity, addiction, and crime. So when we talk about toxicity, we're talking about poison. We're talking about dangerousness. I think almost all of you in class probably know that when somebody drinks too much alcohol, and they get alcohol poisoning, or it's acute toxicity that's built up, somebody can die, right? So there are both acute and chronic concerns with toxicity. Acute is going to be a short-term single dose, and it's too much for your body to handle, and there are physical ramifications or consequences of that. If you have ever had too much to drink and your body has decided to throw up or have a terrible headache or be sweating or shaky, that is in response to mild alcohol poisoning. That's on the acute side. Then we have chronic, which is long-term continued use. So continuing in the vein of alcohol, somebody who continues to drink heavily with alcohol is doing damage to their liver. They might not see that on the outside of their body, but they are causing irreversible damage, chronic long-term toxicity to their body because their body cannot process those vast quantities. So we've got acute toxicity, chronic toxicity. Another word to think about is behavioral toxicity. So not necessarily that the drug itself is toxic to your body, but it's the effects of the drug that might cause harm to other people. So again, I'll go with alcohol. You might have, and I'm just throwing numbers out here, maybe somebody has 4 drinks and they're not having alcohol poisoning, but they decide to get in a car and they're impaired, right? So now their behavior of them getting in the car, probably being a impaired driver, that puts somebody else at risk. That puts somebody else that could cause harm to somebody else. So that would be considered behavioral toxicity, where not necessarily the substance itself is poisoning you or is dangerous in that quantity, but the decisions that you make or the behaviors that you engage in because of that could be dangerous. Another example with alcohol is when people are into the stage of inebriation where they can't make good decisions or they get aggressive and people get in fights and weapons might be pulled out or people might be physically injured. Again, the effects of that drug can cause harm to other people, not necessarily because of what's actually happening in your body and your liver enzymes, but it's the impaired decision making of the person who's consumed the drug. Now somebody else could be in danger because of that. Another big concern is addiction. So mentioned this a little bit in Wednesday's lecture, but we've got kind of a long line, or what do I want to say here? Kind of not even a flow chart, but a continuum, I guess, of things to consider with addiction. Number one of those things is tolerance. So does somebody need to have more of the drug to get the same effect? So I used to drink 1 beer and I felt like I had a little buzz, and now I need to drink 2, and then I need to drink 3, and then I need to drink 20, right? Or I used to smoke 1 cigarette every hour, but now it's 2 cigarettes an hour. Or I used to take 1 pain pill, but now I need to take 2 pain pills. So we build up a tolerance in our body so that we need more of the drug to get that same desired effect. Also with addiction comes physical and psychological dependence. Physical dependence is the withdrawal symptoms. This is when your body is actually kind of rebelling against you because you are not providing that substance anymore. If you've watched any Hollywood movies or TV shows or seen anybody in your social circle who is physically dependent on something, that might be alcohol, that might be a stimulant like cocaine, they might be jittery, they might be sweating, they might be constipated, they might have nausea, they might have dilated pupils, they might not be able to sit still, twitchy, right? So those are physical symptoms or withdrawal symptoms that come along with physical dependence. You have given your body this substance, and now this substance is continuing to be craved, and your body physically rebels against it. Then we also have psychological dependence. So this is also a craving, but it's a craving that's in your mind that allows you to do things that you probably wouldn't ordinarily do if you weren't wanting the reinforcement of that drug. So you've, again, probably heard or seen this. Gosh, if that person wasn't on drugs, they would never, sell their material possessions to purchase their next drug, or they would never work a certain job, or they would never do certain things. They would never leave their kids home alone and go work on the street. But they need that next hit, right? I'm giving some pretty egregious examples of this, but psychological dependence is where you would do things that you in your right mind wouldn't necessarily do. I would encourage all of you, when you're thinking about psychological dependence, you might not be psychologically dependent on a drug, but I think, unfortunately, many people in this generation are psychologically dependent on their mobile device, right? If how do you feel when you've run out of battery? Is your mind constantly ruminating? Are you thinking about how am I going to get home so I can charge my phone? What if somebody sends me a notification and I don't get it, right? So I, just like anybody else, am pretty psychologically dependent on my phone. And that can really recreate or kind of change our brain chemistry. So we'll be talking a little bit more about how the difference looks between psychological and physical dependence. But psychological dependence, do I need my phone? Like, am I going to die without it? Am I physically going to die without it? No, but it does not feel comfortable to not have it, right? So you could replace phone with your morning coffee, or your, for cigarette smokers, their cigarette, right? Like, their body will survive without nicotine, but psychologically it's going to be really hard for them. So we've got physical dependence. Those are withdrawal symptoms that happen after we take away the drug. Then we've got psychological dependence, where we're having cravings and kind of a mental breakdown, I guess, so to speak, if we're unable to obtain more of that drug. We've also have some multiple views on addiction. Your book mentions, is it the substance? Is the substance inherently addicting? Like, is it the actual physical substance? Like, when I eat Starburst candies, is there something in the Starburst that makes me have to want to eat more? Or is it, I like the feeling that I get when I eat Starburst candy? So is it the substance itself? Is it biological? Is there something in our biology that makes something addicting? Is there such thing as an addictive personality? Maybe you know somebody in your family or social circle who really has a focus on one thing for a while, and they like go all in on doing this for a while, right? And they're like very obsessed and addicted with it. Um, is it a medical disease? Is it a mental disorder? Is it a family disorder? Your book mentions in more detail on page 34 kind of the different multiple views of addiction. And again, think about your relationship with your mobile device. Could you physically live without it? Yes. Is your heart going to stop beating and your lungs going to stop breathing? No. But there's certainly a psychological dependence on it. And where does that come from? So pretty fascinating stuff, right? And then crime. That's the third biggest concern. A question that's out there is, does drug use cause crime? Or are criminals more likely to be addicted to drugs, right? Do those things go hand in hand? If somebody finds themselves in a life of crime, do they find themselves more likely to use drugs? Or do we have drug abusers who are more likely to commit crimes? Maybe because they're trying to get money so they can buy more drugs. Some of that has been discredited, especially with some of the more illicit drugs that there's not necessarily a causation or even a correlation between drug use and crime. However, there is some evidence that shows that alcohol use and crime is highly correlated. And that doesn't surprise me just from my own anecdotal stories of people in my life who have been heavy alcohol users. I mean, they've gotten pulled over for DWIs, or they've committed they've done things that they wouldn't have done if they weren't under the influence. So including physical violence, sadly, right? So there is some evidence that says that more alcohol use might be contributing to more crime as well, or there's a correlation at least. So we can't say for sure that drug users are all criminals or criminals are all drug users. And the whole idea of what is a crime and what is not a crime gets a little bit deeper into some of the historical tensions that we've had in our nation. And we'll be talking about that with our drug use laws next week. But that was a concern about setting laws into place and setting regulations into place, is the prevalence of crime and what types of drug use are considered criminal as well. So are laws helpful or harmful when it comes to drug use, right? Laws might be helpful, or we think they're helpful, but for some certain populations of people, some of the drug laws that are out there have definitely been harmful for them. So it's a much deeper question than you might originally think about. More about that topic on Wednesday. This chart is in your book, and it's good for you to read through and think about, gosh, how do I consume my drugs? And again, when I use the word drugs, I'm not saying that they are all negative. A drug is going to be a organic or inorganic substance that changes the person or changes the living organism who ingests it or takes it in. I mean, even animals can experience altered consciousness from the drugs that they might find in nature. So I'm not saying that if you are a person who has a prescription for anything, an antidepressant or a sleep medication or hyperactivity or anxiety or whatever, that is a negative thing. But think about, how do you consume those drugs? So some of the questions like, do you read the instructions when you're taking over-the-counter medications? Do you not exceed the recommended dose? Myself, I personally know that when I really have a headache and the Advil bottle says take 1 to 2, I'm taking 2 and maybe I'm taking 3, right? So that would be a considered drug misuse. If you're taking multiple medications, are you sure that they're not interfering with each other? Do you check the expiration dates of your drugs, et cetera, et cetera? So things to think about when we're talking about toxicity. And again, toxicity is going to be the poisoning or the dangerousness of the buildup of the drug inside your body. So take a glance at that and just some food for thought. All right, now let's get a little detailed on the drug use as a social problem. Unintended consequences of drug use, direct consequences, but then also indirect consequences of when we have people in our society misusing or abusing drugs. This might not even be you, but it could, be somebody in your neighborhood, and that could still have a indirect consequence on you because of their drug use. So drinking and driving, there's direct causes, right? There's a direct consequence. You drink too much, your reaction time goes down, your vision changes, you're going to be impaired. So getting yourself in a car or jumping into a swimming pool, your body's not going to be able to react the way it would if you were totally sober. How many people have been like, oh my gosh, pizza sounds really, really good at 1:30 in the morning. I'm going to order DoorDash. And then you wake up and you're like, why did I spend $40 on this crappy pizza? Right? So that might be an indirect consequence where the alcohol didn't make you order the pizza, but the way you felt, you did some shopping, right? You did some online shopping, or you made a decision that you later regret. So those would be direct and indirect consequences of alcohol or drinking, for example. Health insurance rates might go up. So say you drink and drive and you get in the car, I guess that would be auto insurance rates. Then all of a sudden your auto insurance is going to be like $5,000 a year because you are a high liability for them. But your health insurance rates might go up, and our health insurance rates as a society also go up. So if you haven't learned about health insurance, that's a topic for another class, but people who are healthy and don't take advantage of health insurance still are paying for people who are utilizing health insurance. So if you are a drug user that has a lot of now concerns in your life, you've got liver failure or lung cancer or et cetera, those health insurance costs go up as an indirect consequence of drug use. Or if you're a smoker yourself, then your health insurance rates go up because, again, you're a larger liability for that insurance company. Liver damage, that is a pretty direct consequence of drug use, especially for alcohol use. Our liver processes alcohol at a continuous pace per hour. We'll talk more about that when we get to the alcohol chapter. But when we overdose on alcohol, our body cannot keep up with it, and then our liver does get damaged. So that would be a direct consequence of drug use. We could also say that with cigarettes and lung tissue concerns, right? Or if you're a intravenous drug user and you are constantly using a needle or using a dirty needle or injecting yourself in an unsafe way, your skin can get infected. So that would be a direct consequence of drug use. Homelessness. I don't think anybody's like, I can't wait to keep drinking or using this drug so I can be homeless, right? Nobody sets out for that, but that is a indirect consequence. Because when that drug becomes addictive and you are physically and psychologically dependent on it, you will do whatever you need to do to get it. You might not be able to hold down a job. You might get kicked out of your house. Homelessness is unfortunately a real reality for people who struggle with substance abuse. And again, nobody, when they take their puff of their first cigarette or their first drink, is thinking this might turn me homeless, right? This might, I might not have a house anymore. Nobody's thinking that, but that can be a indirect consequence of drug use. Same thing with job loss. So if you are at a job that requires drug testing and you aren't clean, you'll get fired from that job. If you've got a job where you got to show up and perform, but you're hungover or you make poor decisions because you are inebriated with your drug, that could lead to job loss as well. So job loss, again, nobody is thinking, I'm going to become addicted to drugs so I can lose my job. But it is an indirect consequence of drug use. Another direct consequence is some of those withdrawal symptoms: shaky hands, nausea, headache, constipation, regular heartbeat, flush skin, panic, paranoia. I have myself not seen anybody go through any withdrawal from any other drugs besides just having a bad hangover from alcohol. But these physical symptoms to me sound really, really terrible. And it's understandable that people don't want to quit because they're really scared of what those physical and psychological withdrawal symptoms are going to look like. But that would be a direct consequence of drug use as well. And then emergency medical services could be direct or indirect. So the fire trucks that you see come down the road, they're not putting out fires anymore, right? They are probably administering Narcan or naloxone to people who've overdosed on drugs. And then the rest of us as society continues to pay our property taxes to help fund emergency medical services. So there are indirect consequences of drug misuse and abuse. Including taxing our emergency medical services where they are dealing with situations that might pull them away from something else. So some of these things you maybe haven't thought of, but drug use really does the waves kind of ripple out there for lots of things in society. Here's a final reflection slide for you today. This is the slide that I'm referring to in the Chapter 2 Knowledge Check. There are 3 different questions on this slide. You are only going to respond to one of them, but of course I want you to think about all 3 of them. But you'll do a written response to one of these 3 questions when you click on your Chapter 2 Knowledge quiz. So reading the book or rereading the book certainly will help you formulate an opinion. These are all personal opinions. So there's not necessarily right or wrong answers. I want to know what you think. So please do not just put this prompt into AI and see what AI thinks. I want you to critically think about how drug use shows up in our society, what's acceptable, what's not, what kind of drug laws we have, and how that maybe plays a role in your own life. So our 3 questions here are: tolerance of drug use in the U.S. society has changed. It's much more strict now than it was before. Why do you think that is? Or what does the book have to say about how tolerance of drug use has changed in the United States? Question number 2. Substance abuse disorders aren't always just dependent on the substance. So some substances themselves might not be addictive, but people are addicted to the way they feel when they utilize that substance. But there are some substances that are more likely to result in a use disorder than others. So some substances people really struggle with more in a substance use disorder than they might with other substances. So what do you think about that? And then question number 3 is prompt number 3, drug offenses are the number 1 reason for arrests in the United States. So it's not people speeding, it's not murder, it's not theft, it's not embezzlement, but it's drug offenses. Number 1 reason that people get arrested. Do you think that's helpful? Do you think that's harmful? And how else might society do more self-regulating of drug use and abuse? So all three of these questions are pretty big ones to ponder. So definitely put some thoughts down, read through your book, and come up with your own conclusions on any just one of the three of these questions in this slide. We've got one more slide to go. As a reminder, I will not see you again until next Wednesday. We don't have class on Monday either because of Martin Luther King Day. You do have assignment number 1 due Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. You'll need your textbook to have the drug chart, and then you'll need to talk to 5 friends or family members and get them to answer the questions that are posed in the prompt for assignment number 1. You'll just turn that in. It doesn't need to be very formally formatted or anything like that, but I'm looking forward to hearing what people in your social circle think about how prevalent drug use is with teenagers in the United States. And then when I see you again on Wednesday, we will be covering Chapter 3. So please read Chapter 3 for Wednesday. It'll be the history of drug policy in the United States. I'm looking forward to some lively conversations on this. I certainly have had my mind changed when I learned a bit more about some of the unintended consequences of some of the drug policy in the United States. We will do our Chapter 3 knowledge check right away on Wednesday, so it will be in your best interest to read the chapter before you come to class so you can be successful with that. All right, everybody, we will see you Wednesday. Have a great weekend.